April 17, 1943, 27,000 feet above Schweinfurt, Germany. The sky is an endless grey expanse, jagged clouds slicing through the pale light of morning. Each breath Tommy Reynolds takes fogs the inside of his helmet visor, mingling with the bitter tang of cold metal and machine oil. The B-17 Flying Fortress groans under the strain of flak bursting around it, each explosion like the hammer of a giant against fragile tin. The tail section, where 17-year-old Sergeant Reynolds crouches, shudders violently. Ice clings to the edges of the turret, rimmed along the glass like frost on a winter window. Tommy's fingers are numb before he even touches the controls. Each movement feels like swimming through glue. His leather gloves scrape against the frozen metal, trying desperately to turn the turret, to line up on the attackers he knows are coming. But the mechanism catches, grinding with a shrill metallic protest. He tugs, twists, leans all his weight into it. Nothing. It refuses to move smoothly, only jerking in awkward angles that don't correspond to where he wants to aim. The roar of the B-17's engines thrums in his chest, vibrating through his bones, mixing with the thunder of nearby flak explosions. Bits of metal and paint flakes rattle across the fuselage, pinging like bullets, whispering of death inches away. Tommy tastes iron in his mouth, cold sweat forming beneath his flight jacket. His stomach twists. A part of him wants to curl up in the small space, hide from the chaos. Another part forces him upright, eyes wide against the freezing wind, staring into the empty grey sky for the first sign of Messerschmitt Bf 109s diving from the clouds. Then he hears them, the shrill scream of enemy engines cutting through the roar of the B-17's four Pratt and Whitney R1830 engines. The Messerschmitts are coming. He doesn't see the first one yet, but he can feel it, an almost tangible presence slicing the air. The tailplane vibrates as the B-17 pitches slightly under anti-aircraft fire. Flak bursts explode just a few hundred feet away, showering metal fragments, shaking the fuselage like a leaf in a storm. The entire tail rattles, the turret groans, and Tommy clenches his teeth. His eyes flicker across the frost-cracked glass. The first enemy fighter appears, its sleek fuselage cutting through the clouds, glinting in pale sunlight. Its pilot is confident, arrogant, banking low to line up on the vulnerable tail. Tommy fumbles the turret again. The frozen mechanism jerks sideways. He swears under his breath, the sound muffled in the helmet. The gun doesn't track smoothly. He has to predict the path, lead the target by instinct. And then something incredible happens. By pure accident, the jammed turret angles just enough that the approaching Messerschmitt flies directly into the line of fire. Tommy squeezes the trigger. Tracer rounds streak through the grey sky, catching the fighter squarely. Sparks fly along the fuselage, smoke trailing like a dark ribbon. The enemy plane wrenches violently, wings faltering, engines coughing. The pilot struggles to regain control, but gravity and momentum win. The first 109 spirals downward, disappearing into the clouds below. Tommy can hardly breathe. The realization hits. The frozen turret, the thing he thought would get him killed, is now creating a deadly blind spot, funneling enemy aircraft into the exact trajectory he can fire upon. He fires again instinctively, leading another fighter that dives too low, too confident. It falters, twisting violently before spinning out of sight. The B-17 groans again, shaking under another flak burst. Tommy's heart hammers in time with the aircraft's vibration. His arms ache from the strain of twisting and holding the jammed controls, every muscle screaming. And yet, adrenaline sharpens him, focusing his mind like a scalpel. The enemy doesn't know what they're flying into. He doesn't know what he's doing either, but the results are horrifyingly effective. Then a sharp jolt rocks the turret. Metal groans, ice cracks along the edges, Tommy's stomach drops. He knows the next dive could be the one that breaks through, the one that kills them all. The sky seems to close in, the roar of engines and flak blending into a deafening wall of noise. He swallows hard. Every second stretches into an eternity. He can't look away. He must fire. He must survive. The first kill is only the beginning. The sky above Schweinfurt is about to turn into a deadly gauntlet, and the frozen turret, the very thing he thought would end him, has just become a weapon of survival. But can luck last? Can a 17-year-old, a jammed turret, and sheer improvisation hold off the wrath of the Luftwaffe? The first Messerschmitt spirals out of sight, smoke curling from its engine like a dark ribbon in the pale sky. Tommy Reynolds barely has time to register what just happened before another shadow passes across the frost-cracked glass of his turret. Another 109 is diving fast, banking hard to line up on the tail. His heart hammers, adrenaline turns his fear into razor-sharp focus. He knows this moment could decide the fate of the entire B-17. The roar of engines fills his ears, punctuated by the distant, staccato thunder of flak bursting around the bomber. Shrapnel slices the air, pinging against the fuselage and rattling in the tiny tail compartment. The smell of cold metal, gun oil, and smoke fills his nostrils. Tommy's gloves are numb, fingers aching as he struggles to move the frozen turret, twisting and leaning with all the strength his 17-year-old body can muster. The mechanism sticks, jerking unpredictably, but somehow, miraculously, he angles it just right. The 109 swoops in, confident, precise, its pilot unaware of the trap. Tommy squeezes the trigger, firing short bursts. The bullets tear through the air, sparks flash along the fuselage of the enemy fighter. The plane wrenches violently, engines sputtering, wings twisting. It tries to correct, but it's too late. The frozen turret angles him perfectly into the path of its flight. Another 109 hesitates, watching its wingman fall, and Tommy fires again. Tracer rounds streak through the clouded sky, catching it squarely. Smoke trails behind, the plane spiraling out of control. Time slows in the tail. Tommy can feel every vibration, every jolt of the aircraft as it rocks from nearby flak. His chest is tight with cold, but adrenaline keeps his lungs pumping. He realizes, terrifying and exhilarating at the same time, that the jammed turret has created a deadly pattern. The enemy fighters are falling right into it, like prey into a hunter's trap. Each kill, each near miss, strengthens the rhythm of survival. A third 109 dives in, slightly higher than the others. Tommy twists the turret as far as it will go, fingers raw, sweat freezing against his helmet. He fires, sparks erupt, smoke curls. The pilot struggles to keep control, engines coughing. The B-17 shudders under the strain, but Tommy's aim is perfect, accidentally perfect. Each fighter that falls buys seconds of life for the bomber, and seconds feel like lifetimes at 27,000 feet, trapped in a frozen metal tube. Around him, the rest of the crew is shouting over the intercom, voices tense with fear and urgency. Tommy barely hears them. He is alone in the tail, alone with the cold, the shaking metal, the roar of engines, and the deadly precision that fate or luck has granted him. He catches a glimpse of the sky beyond, grey and endless, dotted with flak bursts and enemy planes. It looks impossible to survive, and yet somehow he is keeping them alive. The fourth fighter approaches, this one from a slightly different angle. Tommy can feel his body trembling, not from fear this time, but from exhaustion. His arms ache, fingers numb, eyes stinging from cold and smoke, but his aim never wavers. Tracer rounds streak upward, catching the plane just as it begins its dive. The fighter wrenches violently, smoke trailing behind it, and spirals away. For the first time, Tommy realizes the terrifying truth. His jammed turret is more than a mechanical problem. It is a weapon. The very thing he thought would get him killed has turned into a trap that the enemy cannot escape. But the danger is far from over. He knows another wave is coming, another dive, another chance for the Luftwaffe to break through. And then he sees it, a shadow circling, higher this time, calculating, watching. The enemy is learning, adapting. Tommy swallows hard, his breath fogging in the visor. This next attack could be the one that ends everything. His fingers freeze on the controls. Can luck and improvisation survive another pass? Can a 17-year-old tail gunner hold a line against the fury of the Luftwaffe? The circling Messerschmitt is patient, calculating, a predator measuring its prey. Tommy's jaw tightens. Every muscle in his body screams in protest as he fights the frozen turret, twisting and levering it as far as the jammed controls will allow. The tail section vibrates violently, each pulse of the aircraft carrying the shock of distant flak bursts. You can almost feel the cold, the roar of engines, the acrid tang of gun smoke mixing with ice on metal and sweat on skin. Time stretches into slow motion, each heartbeat echoing louder than the last. Then it clicks in his mind, a pattern. Every enemy fighter so far has fallen into a predictable arc, drawn into the blind spot created by his frozen turret. It is terrifying. It is brilliant. He realizes that the Luftwaffe pilots, confident in their experience, are unknowingly flying into a trap that was never designed, never meant to exist. Every dive, every angle, every misjudgment plays perfectly into his improvised line of fire. He fires again instinctively, and another 109 jerks violently under the impact. Smoke pours from the engine, black and curling, twisting into the pale sky. Its pilot struggles, frantic, fighting to regain control, but it's too late. Another aircraft follows the same doomed path, drawn into the trap with cruel precision. Tommy's heart hammers. The B-17 trembles yet survives. The tail, once a place of vulnerability, has become a fortress of deadly angles. The crew in the fuselage shouts over the intercom, panic and awe mixing in their voices. Tommy barely hears them. He is locked into the rhythm of the battle. Each plane that falls brings relief, yes, but also the constant, gnawing realization that another is coming. That next attack could overwhelm him, the frozen turret could fail entirely, and the entire bomber might be lost. He ducks instinctively as another flak burst rocks the tail. Metal screeches and groans, shards ping against the fuselage. The cold bites through his flight jacket, sweat freezes on his forehead, and then out of the corner of his eye he sees it, a new plane approaching, not along the previous predictable arc, but from above and behind. It is different, calculating, experienced. This pilot is trying to find the flaw in the deadly pattern Tommy has created. Tommy swallows hard. The fear comes in waves, icy and sudden. He angles the turret as best he can, fingers numb, heart hammering. Tracer rounds streak upward, meeting the 109 as it dives. Smoke spirals. The enemy plane twists violently, yet recovers just enough to stay in the fight. Tommy realizes with a cold shock, improvisation and luck may only get him so far. The next pass may demand everything. The sky stretches endlessly, a theater of destruction and chance. Each pilot who falls, each maneuver he executes, reinforces the deadly rhythm, but also raises the stakes. One mistake, one mechanical failure, one misjudged angle, and the B-17 could tumble from the clouds, shredded by flak and guns. Tommy feels it in his bones. Survival here is not skill alone. It is instinct, courage, and the merciless interplay of chaos. And then he hears it, the distant, high-pitched whine of another Bf-109 diving in. This is it, the one that might break through. Tommy braces himself, knowing that the frozen turret, the accidental weapon, must hold once more. His arms are burning, teeth chattering, eyes burning from cold and smoke. But he cannot stop. He cannot falter. The survival of the bomber and everyone aboard rests in the jammed metal, the bullets, and his instinct. The circling Messerschmitt is relentless. Its engine screams through the sky, a sharp metallic wail that cuts over the B-17's own thunderous engines. Tommy Reynolds grips the frozen turret, knuckles white, every sinew straining against the uncooperative metal. The vibration of the tailplane courses through his arms, chest, and jaw. You can almost feel the tension, the electric anticipation that pulses with each heartbeat. Every second stretches as if time itself is holding its breath. Then it happens. The enemy pilot makes a critical mistake. Overconfident, he dives too steeply, banking too sharply toward the tail. Tommy's heart leaps. He instinctively squeezes the trigger. Tracer rounds streak through the gray sky, cutting a path that intersects perfectly with the fighter's flight. Sparks fly, black smoke curls from the fuselage, and the 109 wrenches violently, twisting like a leaf in a storm. The pilot fights desperately to regain control, but the momentum, the cold, and the B-17's unpredictable movement conspire against him. The fighter spirals downward, disappearing into the clouds. Tommy's chest heaves. The rhythm of fear and action, of death and survival, pulses through him. Another fighter approaches from starboard, slightly higher, banking aggressively. He fires again, bullets tearing through the air. The plane shudders violently, smoke trailing and spirals away. Tommy realizes, with a mix of shock and clarity, that the frozen turret, his supposed weakness, is now a tool of calculated destruction. The Luftwaffe pilots are unknowingly following the lines he can shoot, the blind spots he never intended to create. The tail section shakes violently as another flak burst detonates nearby. Metal groans. The turret jerks. Tommy's body aches from the strain, muscles screaming, teeth chattering in the freezing wind. He feels the cold bite into his spine and fingers, yet adrenaline pushes him forward, sharpening his senses to a terrifying precision. Every approaching fighter seems trapped in the path of his gun, every dive predictable. It's a rhythm born from accident, desperation, and instinct. And yet the danger is far from over. A new shadow appears high above, circling with purpose. This pilot is different, experienced, calculating, looking for the flaw in Tommy's deadly improvisation. The B-17 rocks under another near-miss, metal screaming, rivets shuddering. Tommy tilts the turret, firing bursts at angles he barely controls. The enemy jerks violently, but it recovers, coming back for another pass. Sweat freezes against his helmet. Fingers numb, vision stinging, muscles trembling, Tommy realizes this fight is far from finished. He is no longer a boy in a tailed turret. He is the axis of a deadly pattern, the heart of survival itself. One more mistake, one misjudged angle, and it could all be over. He swallows hard. Focus narrows to the enemy, the jammed turret, and the rhythm of life and death unfolding around him. And then the bomber jolts violently, another flak burst, closer this time. Sparks fly along the fuselage. Tommy grits his teeth. He knows the next seconds will decide not just the mission, but whether he lives to see another sunrise. The circling fighter makes its move. He braces for the impossible. The last Messerschmitt dives in with lethal precision. Tommy Reynolds braces himself, arms burning, fingers numb from cold and tension, every muscle coiled like a spring. The tail shudders violently as flak detonates nearby, fragments pinging across the fuselage. The roar of engines, the crackle of bullets, the explosion of anti-aircraft shells all combine into a deafening symphony of chaos. You can almost feel it, the cold biting through layers of flight gear, the wind ripping past at unimaginable speed, the sheer presence of death all around. The enemy plane is fast, calculating, aggressive. Tommy twists the jammed turret, leaning, pulling with every ounce of strength, forcing the frozen mechanism into angles it was never designed to reach. His teeth chatter uncontrollably, ice has formed along the edges of the turret glass. And yet instinct guides him. Bullets tear into the sky, catching the Messerschmitt as it banks too sharply. Smoke curls from the engine, and the fighter wobbles violently. A second 109 swoops in, banking low. Tommy fires again. Sparks and smoke flare, tracer rounds cutting bright lines across the grey heavens. He feels the recoil through his arms, the vibration through the turret frame. Another plane falters, twisting uncontrollably before spiraling downward. One by one, they fall into the trap, the frozen turret forcing the Luftwaffe pilots into predictable, deadly arcs. Inside the fuselage, the rest of the crew shouts over the intercom. Fear, adrenaline, disbelief, they all mix into a chaotic chorus that barely reaches Tommy's ears over the storm of engines and flak. He is alone in the tail, yet everything depends on him. Every passing second is a test of endurance, skill, and sheer luck. Sweat freezes on his face, muscles burn, and the ice around him creaks like it could give way at any moment. Then another fighter approaches, from above this time, banking with precision. Tommy's stomach tightens. This one is experienced, not reckless, not predictable. He angles the turret with all the strength left in his arms, squeezes the trigger. Tracer round streak, smoke rises, sparks flare. The plane shudders, twists, but holds. It circles back, relentless. Tommy's breath comes in ragged gasps. The tail feels impossibly small, impossibly fragile, a cage of metal surrounded by the roaring sky. For the first time, he feels the weight of what he has accomplished. The frozen turret, the mechanical failure everyone would have panicked over, has become a deadly weapon. Improvisation and desperation have turned into tactical advantage, yet he knows, instinctively, that it's not over. One misjudged angle, one flinch, one moment of hesitation, and everything could collapse. He braces himself as the next 109 dives. The tail groans under the assault, metal twisting, ice cracking. Bullets tear past the fuselage, some harmless, some striking dangerously close. Tommy squeezes the trigger, feels the recoil, hears the bullet's impact. Another fighter wrenches violently, spirals out of the sky, leaving smoke curling in its wake. In that frozen, violent sky, Tommy understands something essential. Survival isn't just skill, it isn't just courage. It is improvisation, it is luck, and it is the ability to act in the crucible of fire when every instinct screams to panic. And above all, it is the ability of a 17-year-old boy, alone in a tailed turret, to turn a frozen mechanical failure into a deadly force that saves his crew. But the battle is not yet won. Another shadow appears above, circling, calculating, patient, ready to exploit the one flaw in Tommy's deadly pattern. The tail shudders again as flak explodes nearby. Tommy leans into the turret, teeth gritted, eyes wide, muscles screaming. The next seconds will decide everything. The circling fighter makes its final pass. Tommy Reynolds braces himself, every nerve screaming. The tail of the B-17 shudders under flak bursts, metal groaning, rivets straining. His arms burn from holding the jammed turret, fingers numb, teeth chattering, sweat freezes on his face. He fires once, twice, tracer rounds streaking like molten threads in the grey sky. The Messerschmitt wrenches violently, smoke trailing, then spirals away, never to return. Silence follows. The B-17 rocks gently, battered but intact, engines straining, flak bursts now distant and faint. Tommy slumps in the tail turret, chest heaving, disbelief and exhaustion flooding him. He can hardly comprehend what just happened. 17 years old, a jammed turret. And yet somehow he became the difference between life and death for the crew of this bomber. Inside, the rest of the crew exchanges shouted, exhilarated, trembling words over the intercom. Relief washes through the fuselage. The young gunner lowers the turret, hands shaking, frost cracking along the glass. He doesn't feel heroic. He feels luck, chaos, fire, a fragile convergence of chance and instinct that saved lives today. Below, Schweinfurt disappears into the clouds, flak bursts fadding like distant fireworks. Tommy reflects on the lesson he has learned, carved into the metal, ice and smoke of the tail section, that in war mistakes can become miracles, weaknesses can become weapons, and a single moment of clarity, born of desperation, can alter the course of events. Survival is unpredictable, brutal, and merciless, yet in this frozen moment, improvisation turned fear into victory. The B-17 limps onward toward friendly skis. The tail turret, once a liability, is now a testament to courage under pressure, to the unpredictable genius born of a desperate teenager. Tommy leans back, staring at the endless grey sky, understanding something older than fear, that sometimes heroes are born not from training or experience, but from raw instinct, quick thinking, and sheer chance. As the bomber disappears into the horizon, battered but alive, one thought echoes in Tommy's mind: today they survived. Tomorrow the sky will test them again, and he will be ready, or the frozen turret will fail.